If speaking to the needs and the pain of a long-neglected working class is polarizing, I think you got the wrong word. What we are trying finally to do is to give a voice to people who, after 45 years of work, are not making a nickel more than they did 45 years ago. We are giving a voice to people who are saying we are sick and tired of billionaires like Mr. Bloomberg seeing huge expansions of their wealth while 500,000 people sleep out on the street tonight. And that's what we are saying, Pete, is maybe it's a time for the working class of this country to have a little bit of power in Washington rather than your billionaire campaign contributors.
Senator Sanders, the first question to you. Mayor Bloomberg is pitching himself as a centrist who says he's best positioned to win in November. Why is your revolution a better bet?
In order to beat Donald Trump, we're going to need the largest voter turnout in the history of the United States. Mr. Bloomberg had policies in New York City of stop and frisk, which went after African-American and Latino people in an outrageous way. That is not a way you're going to grow voter turnout. What our movement is about is bringing working class people together, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, around an agenda that works for all of us and not just the billionaire class. And that agenda says that maybe, just maybe, we should join the rest of the industrialized world, guarantee health care to all people as a human right, raise that minimum wage to a living wage of $15 an hour, and have the guts to take on the fossil fuel industry, because their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet and the need to combat climate change. Those are some of the reasons we have the strongest campaign to defeat Donald Trump.
So Mayor Bloomberg, can Senator Sanders beat President Trump, and how do you want to respond to what else he said?
I don't think there's any chance of the senator beating President Trump. You don't start out by saying, I've got 160 million people, I'm going to take away the insurance plan that they love. That's just not a ways that you go and start building the coalition that the Sanders camp thinks that they can do. I don't think there's any chance whatsoever. And if he goes and is the candidate, we will have Donald Trump for another 4 years, and we can't stand that.
We did. Let me tell you what happened. First of all, you're right. And thank you, Las Vegas, for the excellent medical care I got in the hospital 2 days. And I think the one area maybe the Mayor Bloomberg and I share, you have 2 stents as well. All right.
25 years ago.
Well, we both have 2 stents. It's a procedure that is done about 1 million times a year. So we released the full report of that heart attack. Second of all, we released the full, my whole 29 years in the Capitol, the attending physician, all of my history, medical history. And furthermore, we released reports from 2 leading Vermont cardiologists who described my situation. And by the way, who said Bernie Sanders is more than able to deal with the stress and the vigor of being president of the United States. Hey, follow me around the campaign trail, 3, 4, 5 events a day. See how you're doing compared to me.
There are some Democrats who like you a lot, but worry that this plan, Medicare for All, is going to take away private insurance and that it goes too far. Are they right?
No. Let me be very clear. 2 points. For 100 years, from Teddy Roosevelt to Barack Obama, this country has been talking about the need to guarantee health care for all people. And yet today, despite spending twice as much per capita, Chuck, twice as much as any other major country on earth, we got 87 million who are uninsured or underinsured. We got over 60,000 people who die every year because they don't get to a doctor on time. We're getting ripped off outrageously by the greed and corruption of the pharmaceutical industry, which in some cases charges us 10 times more for the same drugs because of their price fixing. 500,000 people go bankrupt every year because they can't afford medical bills. So let me be very clear to my good friends in the Culinary Workers Union, a great union. I will never sign a bill that will reduce the health care benefits they have. We will only expand it for them, for every union in America, and for the working class of this country. Somehow or another, Canada can provide universal health care to all their people, half the cost. UK can do it, France can do it, Germany can do it, all of Europe can do it. Gee whiz, somehow or another, we are the only major country on earth that can't do it. Why is that? And I'll tell you why. It's because last year the healthcare industry made $100 billion in profits. Pharmaceutical industry, top 6 companies, $69 billion in profit. And those CEOs are contributing to Pete's campaign and other campaigns up here.
Let's clear this
up. So maybe
it
is finally time that we said as a nation, enough is enough. The function of a rational healthcare system is not to make the pharmaceutical industry and the drug companies rich. It is to provide healthcare to all people as a human right, not a privilege.
Mr. Vice President,
no premiums, no
Mr. Vice President,
no deductibles. Well, I think we have over 10.6 million people on Twitter, and 99.9% of them are decent human beings, are working people, are people who believe in justice, compassion, and love. And if there are a few people who make ugly remarks, who attack trade union leaders, I disown those people. They are not part of our movement. But let me also say, what I hope my friends up here will agree with, is that if you look at the Wild West of the internet, talk to some of the African-American women on my campaign, talk to Senator Nina Turner, talk to others, and find the vicious, racist, sexist attacks that are coming their way as well. So I would hope that all of us understand that we should do everything we possibly can to end the viciousness and ugliness on the internet. Our campaign is about issues. It's about fighting for the working families and the middle class. It is not about vicious attacks on other people.
Senator, when you say that you disown these attacks and you didn't personally direct them, I believe you.
Well, thank you.
But at a certain point, you got to ask yourself, why did this pattern arise? Why is it especially the case among your supporters?
I don't think it is especially the case, by the way.
That's just not true. Look,
well,
people know.
Pete, if you want to talk to some of the women on my campaign, what you will see is the most ugly, sexist, racist attacks that are, I won't even describe them here, they're so disgusting. And let me say something else about this, not being too paranoid. All of us remember 2016. And what we remember is efforts by Russians and others to try to interfere in our election and divide us up. I'm not saying that's happening, but it would not shock me. I saw some of those tweets regarding the Culinary Workers Union. I have a 30-year, 100% pro-union voting record. Do you think I would support, or anybody supports me, would be attacking union leaders? It's not thinkable. Just, you know, when we talk about a corrupt political system bought by billionaires like Mr. Bloomberg, it manifests itself in a tax code in which not only is Amazon and many other major corporations, some owned by the wealthiest people in this country, not paying a nickel in taxes, we have the insane situation that billionaires today, if you can believe it, have an effective tax rate lower than the middle class.
Senator,
so maybe
you're
just
the tax code. Why are you complaining?
What?
You wrote the code.
You did. You and your campaign. Not me. You and your campaign contributions electing people who represent the wealthy and the powerful.
Yes,
those are the folks.
Democrats. Thank you.
Well, and Republicans too.
Okay.
And George W. Bush as well. We have a grotesque and immoral distribution of wealth and income. Mike Bloomberg owns more wealth than the bottom 125 million Americans. That's wrong. That's immoral. That should not be the case when we got 500,000 people sleeping out on the street, when we have kids who cannot afford to go to college, when we have 45 million people dealing with student debt, We have enormous problems facing this country, and we cannot continue seeing a situation where in the last 3 years, billionaires in this country saw an $850 billion increase in their wealth. Congratulations, Mr. Bloomberg. But the average American last year saw less than a 1% increase in his or her income. That's wrong. Thank you. It is my policy, and I'm very proud of that policy. All right. What we need to do to deal with this grotesque level of income and wealth inequality is make sure that those people who are working, you know what, Mr. Bloomberg, it wasn't you who made all that money. Maybe your workers played some role in that as well. And it is important that those workers are able to share the benefits. Also, when we have so many people who go to work every day and they feel not good about their jobs, they feel like cogs in a machine. I want workers to be able to sit on corporate boards as well so they can have some say over what happens to their lives.
Senator Sanders, in our latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll released yesterday, 2/3 of all voters said they were uncomfortable with a socialist candidate for president. What do you say to those voters, sir?
What was the result of that poll? Who was winning?
The question's to you.
Well, the question was that I was winning, and I think by a fairly comfortable margin. Mike mentioned that. But here is the point. Let's talk about democratic socialism, not communism, Mr. Bloomberg. That's a cheap shot. Let's talk about democratic. Let's talk about what goes on in countries like Denmark, where Pete correctly pointed out they have a much higher quality of life in many respects than we do. What are we talking about? We are living in many ways in a socialist society right now. Problem is, as Dr. Martin Luther King reminded us, we have socialism for the very rich, rugged individualism for the poor.
Wait a second.
Let me finish. When Donald Trump gets $800 million in tax breaks and subsidies to build luxury condominiums, that's socialism for the rich. When Walmart, we have to subsidize Walmart's workers who are on Medicaid and food stamps because the wealthiest family in America pays starvation wages. That's socialism for the rich. I believe in democratic socialism for working people, not billionaires. Health care for all, educational opportunity for all.
Senator, thank you. Mayor Bloomberg,
let's level. All right, let's level, Pete. Under your plan, which is a maintenance continuation of the status quo, can I finish? The average American today is paying $12,000 a year. That's what that family is paying. 20% of a $60,000 income, $12,000 a year. Highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Just the other day, a major study came out from Yale epidemiologists in Lancet, one of the leading medical publications in the world. What they said, my friends, is Medicare for All will save $450 billion a year. Because we are eliminating the absurdity of thousands of separate plans that require hundreds of billions of dollars of administration. And by the way, ending the $100 billion a year in profiteering from the drug companies and the insurance companies. You know, we talk about electability, and everybody up here wants to beat Trump. And we talked about stop and frisk, and we talked about the workplace that Mayor Bloomberg has established and the problems there. But maybe we should also ask how Mayor Bloomberg in 2004 supported George W. Bush for president, put money into Republican candidates for the United States Senate when some of us, Joe and I and others, were fighting for Democrats to control the United States Senate. And maybe we can talk about a billionaire saying that we should not raise the minimum wage or that we should cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. If that's a way to beat Donald Trump, wow, I would be very surprised.
You want a total ban on natural gas extraction, fracking in the next 5 years. The industry obviously supports a lot of jobs around the country, including thousands in the battleground state of Pennsylvania. One unit official there told the New York Times, quote, if we end up with a Democratic candidate that supports a fracking ban, I'm going to tell my members that either you don't vote or you vote for the other guy. What do you tell these workers? It's supporting a big industry right now, sir.
What I tell these workers is that the scientists are telling us that if we don't act incredibly boldly within the next 6-7 years, there will be irreparable damage done, not just to Nevada, not just to Vermont or Massachusetts, but to the entire world. Joe said it right. This is an existential threat. You know what that means, Chuck? That means we're fighting for the future of this planet. And the Green New Deal that I support, by the way, will create up to 20 million good-paying jobs as we move our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. This is a moral issue, my friends. We have to take the responsibility of making sure that the planet we leave our children and grandchildren is a planet that is healthy and habitable, that is more important than the profits of the fossil fuel industry.
The question was about socialism.
Well, the process includes 500 superdelegates on the second ballot. So I think that the will of the people should prevail. Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Most votes should become the nominee. Fortunately, LULAC, among other groups, Latino groups, saw that bill having provisions akin to slavery, Joe. But the bottom line is all of us are united in defeating the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. That we agree on. But where we don't agree, I think, is why we are today the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people. Why 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America when 500,000 people sleep out on the street. Why hundreds of thousands of bright young kids can't afford to go to college and 45 million remain in student debt. Bottom line here, real change never takes place from the top on down, never takes place from an oligarchy controlled by billionaires. We need to mobilize millions of people to stand up for justice. That's our campaign. Join us at BernieSanders.com.
Very strong debate performance from Bernie Sanders. He brings up the fact that billionaires like Mike Bloomberg, they pay a lower tax percentage than regular working class people. And you can see Mike Bloomberg's kind of squeaky voice as he's just like, wait a minute. And then he's just looking dumbfounded. He looked like a deer that was literally hit with the headlights. He didn't know what was going on for a lot of the debate. On the topic of if Bernie was polarizing, you just look at like the way the question was framed, and he defends himself saying, if it's polarizing to defend working class people, and these people who haven't had a voice, these people who haven't seen their wages gone up when you factor in inflation by even a nickel in 40 years. Talking to those points that so many Americans care about, especially a lot of people that are informed politically, he talks about how the insurance company or the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry, these profits have gone up by ridiculous amounts. He said it was 100 billion for one of them, 69 billion for the other. He talked about how his followers, he basically disowned anyone who is online that's bullying or being rude. Talked about his health. He talked about all these different things. And it can be argued that he had a great performance, that he understands the political climate, he understands what's going on, and he is going to be a heavyweight on that stage against Donald Trump. Bernie's great at debating, he's great at memorizing facts, statistics, he understands the political process, he has the background to back it up. Elizabeth Warren did great as well. She really came swinging after Bloomberg, and I'd say that Warren at this point, especially with Yang being out, she's my number 2 option. I don't love the interaction with her and Bernie a month or so ago, and that she waited until last minute to try and like leak that story out. But I do like a lot of her policies, and I believe she's very smart, and she would make a great president. Bernie talking about how Mike Bloomberg owns more wealth than the bottom 125 million Americans. That's so crazy to think about. The fact that I mean, you think of how many people went to like your high school potentially. I mean, if it was a small high school, maybe a couple hundred, but if it's a big high school, thousands. And you literally times that by over 100,000. And you realize, like, this guy has such a ridiculous amount of money, and there's no way he worked 125 million times harder than his employees and then these other people. He probably worked hard, but I mean, you see on the debate stage, he's not brighter than any one of those candidates. I don't know how much he inherited, but for a lot of people, they inherit their wealth. Trump, the Kochs, they would not be wealthy in the way they are if they hadn't inherited such crazy amounts of money. Wealth does not equal intelligence. Sometimes there's a correlation, but there are really intelligent individuals that, as Bernie's pointed out, understand the political system. This was the Howard Schultz interview. They understand the political system and they make $40,000 per year. There's educators, there's campaign workers, there's people that work for nonprofits or government that are far from being wealthy, that are sharp as a tack and understand the political system remarkably well. Good performance overall, though, from our man Bernard Sanders.